Welcome to the Parts and Labor Podcast, the podcast that explores strategies, systems, and stories that drive salon success. I'm Alicia, founder and CEO of Salon Scale.
And I'm Whitney, head of sales here at Salon Scale. Welcome to the Parts and Labor Podcast. Okay, welcome back to the Parts and Labor Podcast. My name is Whitney.
And I'm Alicia.
And today we are going to be talking about, actually, I'm not sure that you know this, something that sparked from something that you said towards the end of one of our last episodes, which was the fact that you changed your pricing structure 4 times before you started charging parts plus labor. And then I started thinking back, one, like I would have been your customer that entire time. And that would have been a short window because the salon's been charging parts plus labor for quite some time now. So I'm like, wow, it's like you changed your pricing structure like every year. And me as a client coming to you had no idea. And so again, that really started me on a spiral because I would check your service menu every time before I booked in. And so I started thinking, do I actually care? And do clients actually care the way that you charge, or do they care that they can easily see what they're going to pay when they come get their hair done?
Yeah, I mean, I think every year you always have to analyze. You're always short on something or something needs to happen. So I think the conversation would always happen at the end of the year would go, I do my year-end books, and it just wasn't correlating. So it would say we were making more profit than we really were, but the cash isn't there. So then it would make me drive back into like the operational side of the business, like what's going on. And so that's where it's like, well, are we charging enough? Are we, covering those costs? And so there was only 2 things I could ever do every year, which was increase the price and have a hit to the customer, or take a service charge, so take more from the staff, or reduce the commission. Mm-hmm. So like it was always a balance between, okay, who am I going to disappoint this year, And I think when it comes to customers, I think customers are used to inflation. They're used to pricing going up. But I think what's important in over those years is to really figure out what the threshold of increase is. So I always kind of stuck within a 10%. I wouldn't lift the prices any higher than 10% annually, because if I looked at what inflation normally is, it's, between 3 to 5% is a pretty average. So at 10%, that's quite a bit higher. Mm-hmm. So I always wanted to stay within that. So the base prices, if anything, I'd lift them up about 10% to cover that. And then when it came to commissions, those are way harder conversations. So having to sit down with your team and say, oh, hey, remember when I told you I was going to pay 55% commission? Now I'm going to pay you 50%. Like that's basically me saying bye to that stylist. They're going to leave. But when you're sitting in that seat, that's the seat of a CEO. Like that's your job, is to look at really the financial stability of the business and then start to make decisions. So you're either going to make revenue decisions, increase how much you're going to charge, and or cover those costs in other ways, and or a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. So depending on the season, depending on what's going on, you're kind of doing both of those things at the same time.
And when you went back and forth between disappointing your customers and your stylist, but as far as like the way that you charge, like customer facing, like on your service menu, did that ever change? Or obviously when you switched to parts plus labor, that changed. But did you play around with like a la carte or like package pricing? Did you kind of always keep that part the same, but then just go up or down on commission rates or prices?
Most of the menus stayed the same, but the saving grace was the plus sign, $100 plus, because then you could just lift it without having to update a website and communicate all your messaging everywhere. But I think like there was some, throughout the like 10 years of ownership, there was new trends coming and new different techniques that were coming. So some of those became kind of specialty services. Mm-hmm. So we would add to the menu versus like change it all the way around. So and that would be usually how I would structure it to keep it as easy as possible. But yeah.
And did you find that clients often booked in, like when you added these new services? How specific was your service menu? Did clients often book in for the wrong thing? Like how I enjoy looking up different service menus, especially if they charge parts plus labor, because I find there's such a range. Some just have like the price and then the plus, and the plus is the product cost. And some have like the full meal deal, like this is the way we charge, this is why we do it, like a lot of explanation. There's like a full range of the way that owners explain it. So I'm curious, like when you had kind of your pricing initially, did you find that people often booked in for the wrong thing before you switched to hourly?
I mean, I think any stylist that has already got a clientele, usually you've already controlled what you're booking them in for next time. So like those menus are pretty set. And then it's really those net new customers. So like a net new customer coming in, if they're going to a senior stylist, a lot of the seniors started to doing consultations first. So like they'd consult the person first before they even book them in to get them into the chair. That's usually anyone that was like 4 to 5 years plus behind the chair. But anyone new, so like any brand new stylist, that's exactly where you want to look to see if is your menu correlating properly to brand new clients to your business. Look at like your first year stylists, and then that will be able to tell you if they're booking in for highlights, but they want a full on color correction. If that happens more than ever, then there's something wrong with the communicating of your menu, and you might need to kind of make some adjustments there. But that usually does happen in the case because a lot of the times I always say it's like going to the dentist and being like, yeah, I need my R7s and my L whatever. It's like we don't know the language of what that is. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult, but I think customers have that too. So I would say the easiest way to control that is to have a consultation in place. And whether it's a paid consultation and then the payment goes towards the next service or a free one, expect a lot of no-shows. I think that allows you to build the communication of what actually you're going to perform.
And I have an opinion on this, but I'm curious your opinion. Do you think that clients have an opinion? Because I'll scroll and I'll see like polls, like we polled 10,000 clients and they said that they prefer this method of pricing. And it's like, well, yeah, if you poll people, they're going to give an answer. Everybody loves answering a poll. But do you think that there is actually a preference? Like, do you think that clients actually care about the way that you've structured your pricing?
Yes and no. I think like it's that method of like fast, cheap, and good, and you can only pick 2 of the 3. Like every customer, like that's what they're looking at. So someone's gonna want it like cheap and fast, and someone wants it like good and cheap, and like So that's kind of the matrix in what a consumer is thinking when they come into finding a business or getting that. So really, I think that that's really what they're looking for. And I think that, that's something that you might want to kind of see who you're attracting. Like, are you attracting customers that want quicker services, want them lower in price point? What is their average kind of budgets? These are things that you can kind of survey. Like everyone has, hopefully, most people have a CRM or a client record that is like your client list in your booking software. So if you actually pull that list once a year and you just send a survey out to all your clients and you ask them just specific questions about like, how was your experience this year? What would your average budget range be? And just get like an overall pull or pulse of like who is actually coming in can help you understand if that's actually matching too. But yeah, I do think that customers, a lot of it is it's the uncomfortable conversation because they do have a set budget in their head or what they want to pay, and they don't necessarily know that the look that I want to achieve, like what that will actually cost. And it's really hard because it's pretty custom, usually what they want. And so that's where you get sticker shock. That's where you get all those kinds of things happening if you don't quite understand, like, what is this customer's expectations?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with that. I mean, I think as a consumer, what I want to know from any company is what I can expect to pay. And I don't really care how we arrive to that number. But if I look at a service menu and I don't see any pricing at all, I'm probably not going to call. It's just, I'm usually like booking at like 10 o'clock at night. I just want to be able to, whether it's adding up the things, whether it's package, whether it's parts plus labor, I want to know like within like $100, because I have a lot of hair, like about what I'm going to expect to pay. And I think so when I see these kind of polls or posts about like, well, customers prefer this method, what I think is, I actually just think they want clarity in what it's going to cost when they go to a service menu. Because if you think of 2 customers that got their hair done, would a conversation ever be like, oh, Alicia, I really like your hair. How do they price? Do they do a la carte? No one even knows what that means, right? Like, are they pricing parts plus labor? Or what, how much did that cost?
Yeah.
Like, can I afford to also get that done? Because I want exactly what you had. So what that budget is. So I think that when you're looking towards like your pricing menu, yeah, of course, like customer facing is important, but I think the most important thing is it needs to be clear about what they can expect to pay, so you don't get that sticker shock, and so you have that confidence in charging them at the end. But then I really went on a deep spiral, and I started thinking about these other companies, because you kind of stay married to like that one pricing model, and our salon prices like this. And then I started thinking about these other companies. The first one that came to mind was Netflix. And I started thinking, if you had told me like 5 years ago, if I was going to be paying for Netflix and watching commercials on it, I'd been like, absolutely not. Netflix, the whole point of the streaming service and me paying extra money for it is that I don't have to watch commercials. And then Netflix did a complete 180 on the pillar that they stood for, right? Like no commercials. And now we pay and we watch commercials. And as years go on, there'll be more commercials. And the amount for Netflix will still go higher. But they reached a point where it's like everybody either has Netflix or they don't, right? They're probably not gaining a ton of new subscribers each day. So everybody knows about this platform, and they either have bought it or not. And so how do you add another revenue stream when you've kind of topped out of like everybody already knows about Netflix and has decided to buy or not? And so they did in the form of commercials. And then I started thinking about Uber and started thinking, like, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, if Uber accepted tips, would you still get an Uber over cab? I'd be like, no. Like Uber started out as like one payment. They have your card on file. You just get out. You don't tip. It's a really easy transaction. You see exactly what you're going to pay. And now you tip your Uber. Like it's a considerable part of like the ride. And so again, that's somewhere that it's just like they needed a new revenue stream and they added it. And they knew that if they kept their value high enough, it was still easy enough. If Netflix still has enough value, they still put enough effort into creating new content and shows for us to watch, their consumer base will stay, and they did. And so I was just thinking, the amount of heat we used to get about, just charge your shit. I won't say your line. Just charge your fucking client. Yes. The amount of heat. And I guess when you put it like that, you would get heat. But, the kind of like, oh, no, I could never do that. And I started thinking, if Netflix can start streaming commercials and we're paying for it and we're watching, you can pass your product costs on to the client if you want that new revenue stream. If that is going to be what's best for business, they did what's best for business, but they kept their value high enough. And so their customers stayed. So if that is best for business, do what's going to be the best thing for your bottom line. If you provide that continuous value, your customers will still stay.
Yeah. And I think, one of the big things to understand too is that pricing, the way that you display pricing, that's to grab or hook a client in, right? That's to get the initial client in. And that's the hardest part. So that's where brand really stands out. Is like, how can your brand pop out and be clear right from there that they want to even come into the salon? Mm-hmm. Once you got them in the salon, they're a customer. So they're not worried about pricing anymore. Now they're working, that's where they get loyalty. That's where when you give them ultra value, they'll pay anything if they have that connection with you. So the pricing concerns on a customer visit 2, 3, 4 is completely low. So the only people that have really big pricing issues are like lots of newer people coming in. Mm-hmm. And so that's where you want to kind of get that wrapped in. And then when it comes to companies like Netflix and a lot of these big tech companies that kind of, we all knew that they were up to this. Like now instead of paying one payment monthly, now we have like 16 subscriptions. That's definitely where we're at now. But it's the adoption. So essentially, when we look at these tech companies, that's the whole idea is like, how do we play a volume game? We want as many users as possible. That's going to be the KPI, the metric that we're going to go for. So having a low entry point to gather extreme value, low value, or low cost, extreme value, you're going to totally attract a ton of people into there. Once you get the adoption curve high enough and you have a lot of consistent, subscribers, customers that are loyal with you, then that's when the pressure comes in. And so when you look at big corporations, the one thing that's different between like Netflix and these big corporations to a salon is they have investors and they have a board. So what's going to happen is they're governed to grow revenues and take these companies that were not making profit to make them highly profitable or turn that tank on. So they have to think, what are ways that we can do that? So now they have a bunch of users in there. They have a bunch of clients or customers that are using their platforms, and they can now see exactly how they use them and where those points are where they can create a transactional revenue stream, maybe add a little bit more increase to the subscription or value by adding new features, new whatever. And a lot of that stuff comes when you have a good foundation of users that are using it. It's a lot easier of a bet instead of just trying to guess and hopefully they pay. Now you kind of have that hook in the client. And then the other one too is when you look at it is it's all really on that kind of that max amount of clients that you're getting. So if you have a high volume, so they have a high volume of subscribers that are paying the same thing, it's really consistent. We know the leads that are coming in are converting at this rate. If we increase X, like if we add on tipping, if we do these things, what is our big risk? And now they can take calculated risks. So they can say it's likely, 20, we could lose 20% of subscribers by taking that. Is 20% of reduction of subscribers less than us adding that? And the answer probably would be yes. We could afford to lose 50% of our customers now on the new one. And so that's where they look at it. And so the big thing is to take this back into a salon. It's like that's kind of what you want to look at is of your clientele of people coming in. I know we have pricing anxiety and we have anxiety to make change because we're feared of like charging a customer or changing some systems up. But you have to ask yourself is like when you're changing your pricing model and doing all that stuff, you have two customers. You have brand new customers into the salon, and then you have loyal customers. So this is like, how do I retain my customers as one strategy, and how do I build new business at a higher value, like more and more and more? So if you kind of split those two up when you're working through your pricing and you're looking at that, you run just like Netflix and the bigger guys, right? And look at it and look at how can I maximize this? How can I add all those things with still maintaining loyalty on those customers, and maximize my opportunity or my output, and then be my own board of governance and my own board of advisors and the real controller of the revenue or the profit of that business. Every time I talk to a salon owner, it's only you. And I say like, you're wearing all the hats. And so it is your job to turn profit for a business. Like that is your job. And if you can take yourself out of it, so think of you have been hired to be the CEO or the owner of the business. Put yourself in that lens and then coach yourself. If we're not making money or this is happening here, what does the business need? Not what do I need to do and take it personal. What do I need to do to make change? And maybe that is separating your parts and labor. Make sure that those cost of goods are covered every single time. What is that going to do? Instantly boost cash flow. Now I have cash flow. Where am I going to invest that cash? Like, what am I going to do to add more value to the business? And then as I add more value, whether it's education or enhancing the, experience in the salon, how much more can I charge? So every time you do things, it should do one of those situations. And yeah, I think that's my thoughts on that conversation.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I think when looking at raising your prices, it's like, well, yeah, you could have a ton of customers, but if you're net negative on them, or if you're making, $1 or $2, basically doing them for free, it's, you have to raise your prices. You have to, like you said, look at it like a CEO, because there's just we've talked about it a million times, the emotion that goes into pricing, especially when it's something as personal as performing a service on somebody's hair and hoping that they like it. It's hard to not take that personally. But again, if it means that you are looking for a side job, or if it means that you can't pay your bills or the business isn't profitable, then you have to do something. Otherwise, you're just working for free. So it's about, again, attracting those clients and keeping those clients that are actually making you money and turning a profit for the business.
Yeah, I say out of anything, just to kind of summarize that too, is that, ask yourself if you're a salon owner, you're running a business, is like, would you hire you? Like, if you were investing in the salon, would you hire that person? Is that person doing everything they possibly can to return the investment? And what's some advice you'd give that person? Where would you want them to focus on? On, expenses, controlling this, changing commissions, increasing revenue? Like, what part of the business would you, advise that person? And when you do that, that is like, that's your pulse. Like, that is exactly where you need to get to. And it's going to pull you out from being emotionally inside the business. You need to work on it, not in it. And this is, probably the most critical thing you can do to be able to scale it out. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to become a statistic. At the end of the day, over 85% of salons fail. And if you look at how many salons actually get acquired or get sold, minimal. We're talking like maybe 1 or 2% of salons actually get sold. And a lot of the times they just get given away for goodwill. And they get given away for what we call as depreciated assets. So whatever's in there, the chairs of this, someone else takes it over. And a lot of times people are left in debt. A lot of salons, the salon owners had the dreams and they're left with a lot of that. So it's time to get serious, and your job as running that as a salon owner is to look at those ones and make big, bold changes. What's the worst that's going to happen? What's the worst that's going to happen? You charge for your parts on top of the labor. Now what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to lose 10% of your clientele. Okay, well, what's 10% of your clientele worth? So if you lose the 10% and 90% of them do that, and you're now making money, what's the worst thing about that scenario? So getting yourself confident and leaning in, who cares about those odd case scenarios? And, it's the best thing you can do is just take yourself out of it and drive that change and take more risks. Take more risks.
Yeah. And I would say too, just to add to that, switching to like a parts plus labor. So starting to charge for the product. You're looking at me with crazy ads because this is going. So switching to like a parts plus labor method, like starting to charge for the product, it'd be the exact same conversation internally as doing a price increase. That's basically what it is. But it's a method going forward that your price increases are never reliant upon inflation or rising product costs again. It's just or guesswork or like hoping and praying that product's covered. It just is. But that initial step is no more scary than just doing a price increase.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I would also say too that like on the conversation of like Netflix and any of these tech companies, they have mass margins. Like we're talking 85% margins. Salons have 10% margin, 20% margins. Like that's a big change. So what that means is you need to act now more than ever to cover those costs. Netflix and Uber can throw piles of money out on marketing and acquisitions and new things for their teams because they have 80% margins. They have money to burn, whereas the salon does not have money. So you have to do the easiest thing you can do for yourself is start by covering all your costs and move into that to increase that margin. And then from increasing your margin, you can now make some better decisions. But you don't have room. Like you simply just don't have the room to play.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that might be a good spot to wrap it up for today.
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, off to you to end the episode.
Awesome.
Casey doesn't allow me to talk.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us here on this episode. We're looking forward to you on the next one. For those that listen to this and you are wanting to take the next step with SalonScale, please head to our website, salonscale.com, and go ahead and start your 14-day free trial today.